Hello and welcome. I'm Kenzie.
And I'm Carli, and this is Ask a Therapist.
Each week, we explore life's most relatable questions, from relationships and boundaries to burnout and self-worth, all through a therapist's lens.
We're licensed therapists, but this isn't therapy. It's a place for insight, reflection, and a little humor along the way.
Your questions,
our insights.
Ask a Therapist. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. The content shared should not be considered a substitute for professional mental health care, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly encourage listeners to seek help from a licensed mental health professional for any personal or psychological concerns.
Any advice or commentary offered is based solely on the information provided. As such, we cannot guarantee any specific outcomes, and the feedback given should not be interpreted as professional mental health advice. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call 911, 988, or 211.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Ask a Therapist. This is episode 12, and this week we are focusing on avoidant attachment. So detailing what it is, how you can heal even while not currently in a romantic relationship, and some useful tips. We want to share just a quick reminder that while our questions are specific to listener submissions, the insight and responses we share are meant to be supportive and applicable to anyone who may be listening. So if you're curious about avoidant attachment, think you may have it, or want to know how to better understand somebody who does, this episode is for you. We're excited to explore this with you all, so we're going to get started. I have our icebreaker for today. So I'm going to ask this, and it's going to seem like a very silly question, Carli.
Can I just tell the listeners that you would not tell me what the icebreaker question was prior? So I am nervous, but I'm trusting you. So here we go.
She has no preparation. I promised her that she wouldn't need preparation for this icebreaker question. But just a little insight. I don't know how this question came about in our relationship. I don't know if somebody asked us. I don't know how this found its way into my husband and I's lives, but we ask people this all the time now, and it is always somehow such a passionate response, and people feel very strongly about their choices. So the question is, if you have to rank these three crackers, saltines, Ritz, and club crackers, how would you rank them?
So random. And I think I'm going Ritz first. Those are probably my favorite, and probably the only ones that I would eat alone, like without anything. I could definitely do Ritz. Second would probably be saltine. I like them like with soup and things like that, you know. Yeah. Club is okay, but a little too sweet, maybe. There's like a sweet element that I don't exactly love. So those are probably the only ones that I just like never purchase, don't really think about. What's your answer?
I genuinely, everybody always, nobody agrees with this, and I don't understand how. Saltines are by far my favorite of that list. I could eat saltines all day. I think that the Ritz and Club, I used to say that Club was before Ritz, and I think I might have changed my mind a little bit now just because I'm going to stick with saltine, Club, Ritz. Ritz are just so buttery for me. They're so rich, I think, that they're not my go-to. And I think that cheese tastes better on a Club cracker than on a Ritz cracker.
Okay, I can accept that. I can accept a good dip with a Club cracker, you know what I mean? Like that. I can see that. So, okay, acceptable.
I am very curious to see what other people say to this. So I hope that we get some responses, because it tends to be a little bit of a heated conversation starter.
Okay, good to know.
All right. Well, Carli, you have our question today. It's a great one. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yes, love is in the air this week, guys. We're preparing for Valentine's Day this weekend. And so whether you are partnered, happily partnered, looking to be partnered, happily single, I still think this topic is definitely a relevant one. And so we are going to jump right in. Okay. Hi, Kenzie and Carli. I've been single for a while and recently started learning about attachment styles. The more I read, the more I'm realizing I probably have an avoidant attachment style. As a woman in my 40s, I value my independence a lot, but I also notice that when relationships start to feel emotionally close or serious, I tend to pull away or find reasons why it won't work. I've done a lot of work to feel at peace with myself, and I fear that allowing someone too close will disrupt that. Part of me worries that this means something is wrong with me, or that I'm just not meant for a deep, long term relationship. Another part of me wonders if this is something I can actually change. Is it possible to move from an avoidant attachment style toward a more secure one, especially if you're currently single? And how do you start doing that without forcing yourself into relationships that don't feel authentic? Your thoughts are appreciated. So, yeah, Kenzie, what do you
Okay.
think?
Okay. Well, first of all, I absolutely love how self-aware this listener is, the fact that they are doing this research, trying to figure out some of their patterns, aware enough to ask this question. I just thought that was amazing. Um, and here's the thing, like uncovering truths about ourselves can feel so scary. Like this listener said, it can start to feel like, is there something wrong with me? Can I actually change? And that does start to feel just overwhelming, hard, scary. Um, and so it's so much easier to like remain inconspicuous about just patterns and ways that we might engage with other people or with the world so that we don't have to face it, so that we don't have to face that fear or that uncertainty. The truth is that that doesn't keep you emotionally safe. It keeps you emotionally stuck. And so this information, while it might feel overwhelming, while it might feel like, is there something wrong with me? Can I actually change? It gives you insight to help you move forward. And so you and anyone listening to this, like, yes, absolutely you can change. No, there's nothing wrong with you. Attachment wounds, specifically avoidant attachment, is a very learned, resilient response to childhood wounds. And so this is not something that's wrong with you. It's an adaptation so that you could um, move forward and protect yourself. Um, and so that's something that we can kind of go into a little bit too. And it sounds like this listener's done a lot of their own kind of research, but just for anybody that's listening that wants to understand avoidant attachment a little bit more, um, attachment wounds usually come from experiences early in life with parents or caregivers, and people with avoidant attachment usually have had experiences where their caregiver was unavailable, distant, or rejecting and didn't reliably meet the infant or child's needs. And so this leads to an avoidant attachment style as an adult characterized by fear of emotional intimacy, avoiding emotionally close relationships, avoiding expressing emotions and conflict, minimizing or dismissing others' feelings, struggling to maintain a long term relationship, being independent, and ultimately like a deep rejection wound or fear of rejection.
Mm. Wow, you
Yeah.
touched on like 3 or 4 things that I wanna go deeper into, so thank you for that.
Circle back, circle back.
I mean, the first being learning things about yourself is hard, and it does make me think about, like, you Google something or you go on WebMD and you read something, you're like, "I've got it, mesothelioma, it's me, I've got it." Like, you just start kinda, like, catastrophizing a little bit, and so getting information is helpful and useful in as much as you know how to use it and how to apply it.
Mhm.
Just reading and learning things about yourself that make you feel more stuck and like let's be mindful of what's actually helpful. So
Yep,
I don't know if this person is in therapy. I think this is a great topic to take to your therapist, to like kind of get a little bit more insight, and not just sentence yourself to a lifetime of avoidance and lack of connection, because it certainly
yep,
doesn't have to be that way.
yep,
um also, the just, reframing of it as like a negative or a problem or something being wrong with you versus it being adaptive.
Yeah.
And I love that you gave a little information about like where it stems from because this is a whole theory. We learn about it as therapists, especially as marriage and family therapists. It's like a major tenet to a systemic viewpoint is understanding how attachment bonds are even formed.
Mhm.
And to all the information that you provided, um, everyone has an attachment style. Okay,
Mhm.
so this is not like a diagnosis, like maybe you have it or maybe you don't. People learn to attach and bond differently depending on those early childhood experiences. And there is also a factor of like it different temperaments and then personalities also lend to like why you might respond one way versus another way. So it is quite possible that you and a sibling who both have the same parents have different attachment styles, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And they actually did this study where, or like what this is based on, is watching what happens when parents drop children off. We're talking like early stages, like infant, toddler stages,
Mhm.
dropping them off with a caregiver, typically like a daycare setting or something like that, a space where they're unfamiliar. They're
Yeah.
safe, but they're
Yeah.
unfamiliar and studying how the children respond,
Yeah.
both when the parent leaves and also when the parent or primary caregiver returns.
Yeah.
And you'll notice a few different responses. There are some children who are able to somewhat like self soothe. They may be uncomfortable, they may be skeptical, but they may not cry. Or if they cry, they may like quickly, kind of come to, or they may willingly receive comfort from an alternative caregiver.
Yeah.
And when the parent returns, they are like happy to see them and able to reattach and bond again. And
Yeah.
that is considered a secure attachment. They're able to be away from the parent
Yeah.
and still be okay, like at a safe distance. And then when the parent returns, they're able to re-engage.
Sure.
What this listener is describing is an avoidant attachment. And what that often looks like is the child may actually not cry, or if they do, even when the parent returns, they may be hesitant to re-engage. There may be
Yeah.
like some anger, some resentment there of like, no, you left me, so I don't want
Mhm.
to hug when you pick
Mhm.
me up, or they
Mhm.
don't run and jump into the parent's arms. Those would be signs of an avoidant attachment.
Sure.
As you can probably imagine, the temperament of the child matters with that, right? That
Sure.
people are different. An anxious attachment are children that we might describe as being more clingy and having more separation anxiety. They may
Mhm.
cry profusely. They may not stop crying until the parent returns. When the parent returns, you may not be able to get them off of your leg. They are
Mhm.
like just
Mhm.
clinging. Those are signs, early signs of anxious attachment.
Sure.
And then the last one, what some would call like anxious avoidant or disorganized. Oftentimes we see in cases of abuse
Mhm.
where there is almost a mix between the two. And often this is sometimes when a caregiver or parent is both a source of comfort, but then at times a source of, abuse, neglect, and things of that nature. So almost the kid can't gauge
Mhm.
like, am I safe or am I not? And so that can show up in a variety of ways, and a variety of ways in adulthood. So this is
Yeah.
something that is set in childhood, but
Yeah.
then we tend to see this show up later. It shows up in what you expect of other people. It shows up in how you navigate your relationships, your friendships,
Yeah.
social situations, how you handle rejection. This is where we often then see kind of the results of that. So I just
Yeah.
kind of wanted to bring that added
Yeah.
piece of understanding so we're all dealing with the same language. But
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about here. So,
Okay.
to the point of can it change? Those may be your default settings, and that part may not change. Like, we're not going back to childhood to change it, right?
Yep. Yep.
But you can learn to become securely attached.
Right.
And I have like some practical things as to how we can do that. But just Kenzie, anything you would add there or
No, 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 I was just gonna say that it just highlights, like, again, it was a protective response. It's no longer serving you. So what served you in childhood and how you responded in childhood is not probably not serving you in adulthood because we all need emotional closeness. We need some emotional vulnerability. So if you are an avoidant attachment style, it's no longer protecting you, it's holding you back from being able to feel safe with others. And so, this isn't something that you asked for. This is something that you adapted to in early experiences, and now you're having to do the work to understand it, to change it, to fix it. And so I think that that's just, important to remember too.
100%. Um, Talking about changing your attachment style, I get this is a question that so many people ask, like, can it change? Will it change? If so, how do you do it? What do you think? How can we help this listener like figure out if this is something they can work to shift?
Yes. Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this. First, I want to say this is not always a rule, but research has shown that generally, like the average that it takes for somebody to shift attachment styles, like in a supportive relationship, is around 3 months, and that's as you're like doing active work in a relationship. And so, just kind of putting that out there, it can be shorter, longer for some people, but absolutely, it's possible to change as soon as you start to really apply maybe some of the changes or the knowledge that you're learning. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit. In the book, it's called Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller. There is a line in that book that says, avoidant attachment style always manifests itself. And I read that and just kind of like paused and stopped and was like, okay, like that hits pretty heavy. And I say that not to scare anyone listening, but to be a little bit blunt around, if you want a different experience, you need to have a different experience. You need to address it. You need to work on change, tolerating discomfort, pushing past the fear of vulnerability. There is no perfect person out there that you like just haven't found yet. If you have a pattern of pushing people away, if you desire a relationship where you feel safe, you do have to work for it, and you have to work on yourself. And this listener is being super honest with herself, so I'm answering that question honestly. At some point they said, like, can I get into a relationship where it doesn't feel authentic? It's probably not going to feel authentic at first. If you have an initial spark with someone and they start to get close and you start coming up with reasons why it's not going to work, it might feel inauthentic to try to push past that. But those initial feelings were there, and there needs to be a little bit of room for exploring, like, okay, are these detachment tactics that are coming up because I'm starting to feel uncomfortable? Obviously, working that on that in therapy is important. But and the listener did mention kind of like, can I work on this when I'm not in a relationship? And I have some thoughts on that too, but I want to hand it back to you, Carly, and just see what you were thinking.
Yeah, I'm with you on it's not gonna change if you do nothing. That's,
Yeah.
for sure. It's not something you just like grow out of and then all of a sudden one day you're able to securely attach. So yeah, if you do nothing, this probably won't change, but I would encourage you to think of it more like a pattern than like a life sentence, right? So like
Yeah.
patterns can change, and then the more you practice a new pattern, like you develop a new pattern.
Yeah.
Certain things may still feel natural. You may still be naturally inclined to pull back, but can we make that process less automatic, right? Where you actually have some say in it. Am I pulling back because this is my choice and it feels appropriate based on, what the other person is showing me? Or, do I maybe want to make a different choice here, even though it feels uncomfortable? So, to your
Sure.
point of like it not feeling authentic or natural, or, yeah, when you do something different that you've never done before,
Yeah.
it's gonna feel, awkward and uncomfortable and unnatural, and that's okay. You can work through that
Yeah.
and reorient yourself with a sense of safety that then allows you to at least make a choice about whether or not you want to actually pull back or whether or not you want to like kind of wait this out.
Yeah.
Um but I'm with you on, I think you can work on this as a single person, because I think attachment, you really have to learn to develop safety and security within yourself. If you
Yeah.
don't feel safe with yourself, it's going to be very, very hard to feel safe with another person.
Sure.
specifically with avoidant attachment, with anxious, you might actually feel safer with other people than you feel with yourself. So that might be like a
Sure.
slightly different version of this. But more often than not, if you are an avoidant attachment, if you have an avoidant attachment style, you may find that you actually push away from yourself when you have difficult emotions and
Uh-huh.
that you shut them down, or you have very rigid ways of managing them so that they don't, come out in a particular way. And so I think a really, really good starting point as a single person is to learn to develop some safety within yourself with just difficult emotions. I'm not sure if that's where you were going with it, Kenzie, but what are your thoughts?
You know what? I was actually going I'm so glad that you said that because that's such a good point, and I was actually going in a little bit of a different direction with it. I was gonna say, working on avoidant attachment while single is actually a great time to work on this because attachment doesn't just happen in romantic relationships. It happens in any kind of relationship. So I love that you brought up the relationship with yourself. I was thinking about relationships with friends, with family members, with people
Sure.
that are another like supportive characters in your life. And sometimes with like friends, like you might have avoidant attachment, but it might feel a little bit easier to engage with friends or people who have been in your life for a little while. And those could be really good relationships and opportunities to practice some of that emotional vulnerability, that trust. I had written down what does that look like? And to your point, Carly, like noticing in your body when you start to feel like somebody's needing too much from you, you might feel the desire to flee. You might get annoyed with them. You might be like, they're asking too much of me. I'm gonna shut down. I'm gonna remove myself from the situation. Like it just might feel like a lot. And those are the moments that you have to like sit with, regulate yourself, maybe reflect on after the fact and just kind of say, like, okay, what came up for me there? Like, did I feel like maybe somebody needed something from me, or maybe I needed something from them? And that felt really scary because I only really feel safe when I can rely on myself. I don't feel like I can open up to people in this way. Taking the time to notice what's happening in your body, your automatic response, trying to challenge that, trying to sit with that a little bit longer. That can happen in therapy, it can happen on your own if you feel like you have enough like tools to be able to do that. Um and then working on reframing, like if a friend or somebody, if you feel like they're needing too much from you, can you reframe, you know what? Maybe they wanted to connect with me a little bit more. That felt really scary, but can I see that it wasn't them asking too much from me? That maybe that's okay that people rely on me, or maybe that I need help from other people. Um and this is maybe a little bit like of a weird thing to say, but like start with a stable friend, like start with somebody that maybe doesn't need too much from you. Like if you're going to start with a friend that you know is like wants so much from you all the time and needs so much from you emotionally, that's not a good place to start. Like that's just going to increase the avoidant tendencies. So starting with a stable relationship, somebody with secure attachment, and slowly practicing like opening up to them, asking for help, sharing something with them that maybe feels vulnerable, like that. Those are all ways to increase your ability to have a little bit more of a secure relationship and not to feel so much activation when somebody tries to connect with you a little bit more.
I love these suggestions. I agree that finding low stakes scenarios, relationship situations where you can practice can
Yeah.
help to build your tolerance for the discomfort that comes up. And it
Yeah.
is going to feel uncomfortable. And I so appreciate that you acknowledged, that can be someone needing you, but more often than not, it's what you said about when you realize you are needing or wanting something from
Yeah.
someone else. That
Yeah.
is usually what triggers it because more often than not, you will find it is not uncommon for avoidant attachment style people to find themselves chronically in relationships with anxiously
Yes.
attached people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not by mistake because
Yeah.
oftentimes avoidant attachment, I need a better word, avoidantly attached. I don't know. I keep calling them
Yeah.
like people, but
Yeah.
they are often okay with people needing them.
Yeah.
It's when they realize, like, oh, I actually
Mhm.
care about how long it takes you to get back to me, and I'm feeling a way about this, and I don't like that. Or
Mhm.
you didn't show up for me in a big moment, and now
Yeah.
I feel left out there and I'm feeling
Yeah.
uncomfortable and insecure. And like, no, 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 I can't give anyone that power over me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is a person who's saying, like, I'm well established to a degree. Like I have a sense
Yeah.
of like I'm comfortable in my little world. I don't want anybody coming up in here and messing my stuff up and making me like need them, or like
Mhm.
this is working for me, and I want to protect it. And
Yeah.
I understand that desire to protect, especially when you fought for your peace. Like, I don't know what this person has been through, but when
Yeah.
you finally like feel like your feet are steady,
Yeah.
the idea of giving someone that power, which feels
Mhm.
like power over you, can
Yeah.
be incredibly unsettling. And
Yeah.
so I think, to your point, like using those low stakes relationships to be able to build a tolerance for allowing yourself to have emotions that are uncomfortable, to desire someone or feel like you need someone or rely on someone or ask someone for help. Like,
Yeah.
these are ways to build your tolerance of that feeling. That closeness equates to a lack of safety, because remember, we're going back to childhood. What you learned is like, I don't want to need my parent or caregiver because they left me. So
Yeah.
I got to figure out how to do this thing for myself. And that is what you're challenging
Yeah.
as you try to overcome this.
Yeah, I like that you touched on that because one of the biggest parts of this is that fear of rejection. So it's a little bit like, I'm going to leave you before you can leave me. And then I'm going to miss
Yep.
you. I'm going to feel like, oh my, like, a lot of times in avoidant attachment, you feel like you're constantly like pushing, like you want to create this distance between yourself and the person. And then maybe you end their like there's something wrong, you end the relationship, and then all of a sudden all of these like positive feelings and memories kind of come flooding back, and it's like, oh wait, this is you're seeing it a little bit differently. So um something that I wanted, so you touched on this and I had written it down, and I did actually want to gently challenge this listener a little bit,
Okay.
because something that they said is pretty consistent with an avoidant mindset, that does keep you at arm's length from others, which is, I've done a lot of work to feel at peace with myself, and I fear allowing someone too close will disrupt that. So being independent, being at peace is wonderful. Like that is great. They probably have worked really hard to get to that place, but when it's a mask to avoid emotional intimacy, it's a detachment strategy. That does show up a lot in avoidant attachment. So, we all do need people. We do need people that we're close to. Humans are, you know, very reliant on community and closeness. And that doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but it is important to have an emotional connection or relationship with some people, with friends, with family, or whoever in our lives. And again, this is something that was learned early on. It was a protective coping strategy, but it is something in adulthood that can be hard and that can be difficult, and no longer serving you. So while closeness, connection, vulnerability all probably feels terrifying, like feeling alone, feeling like constantly fearing rejection is equally just as hard. And so, it's think that this listener is kind of like, I'm so scared to give up this piece, or I'm so scared to give up this independence. And also, I may be giving some hints with my question that I'm curious about, can I allow for a safe relationship where I don't kind of pull away, or I don't feel like I have to fear being connected.
Yeah, I hear that too. It's very like all or nothing, like this or that, right? Like,
Yeah.
does this just mean I can't have a close
Right.
relationship?
Right.
Um, and like using like everything that you've gained over the years of whatever you've experienced in relationships, like that's wisdom to bring with you. You're
Yeah.
absolutely going to have to bring your discernment. Everyone is not a safe space for you to be
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Your concern about not wanting to like need or put yourself in a position of being attached to someone who could maybe hurt you or reject you, that's a real possibility. And so, that's a risk that you take whenever you decide to engage in a relationship. And so pacing yourself is very important,
Yeah.
right? Like expecting that, oh, I've been dating this person, I don't know, for 3 months, and you may have to give it some time and be
Yeah.
patient with yourself, right?
Mhm.
Um, because some of that fear, while it may be valid and warranted, it doesn't have to control you, right? Like what we're trying to do is put the power back in your hands to say, I actually have a choice as to
Yeah.
whether I decide that this feels unsafe. And so I'm going to remove myself or separate myself or create more distance. But when you start to feel like it's not a choice, like you almost have to get out, you start getting that like claustrophobic feeling. What we're talking about is setting in place some practices that help you to slow down, stay with
Mhm.
yourself. I know I keep using this word tolerance, build your
Mhm.
tolerance, and then make an intentional choice that can logic can be in that. That's not just all emotion. That doesn't mean you just push yourself to trust someone fully even before you're ready. Bring that wisdom, but then we want you to have the choice to use it, not just have to like kind of acquiesce to like, I guess this is just my fate.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. Were there any other thoughts or are there any other parts of the question, Carly, that we didn't touch on?
I think that is the majority of it. Of course, I want to encourage this person that the fact that you're aware of it is a great first step, which means that you have some say in what you do next.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, like we've been mentioning, this is something you can work toward. It's going to be uncomfortable. I don't want to, lie to you about that, but you can absolutely learn to develop a secure attachment both with yourself and with other people or another person if that's what you decide you want for your life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The only other thing that it were just a couple little practical tips. I do definitely recommend the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller. I think that it has some really good information, resources, research studies. So that's a really good one to read. And then something that was in that book that I thought that was interesting, is that they encourage people to keep like a relationship gratitude list. So if you have avoidant attachment, like kind of keeping a list of like, oh no, here are some things that I'm grateful for. Here's some things that feel nice about having a little bit of like emotional connection and intimacy. And then additionally, if you are working on increasing that tolerance, it can be a lot easier for people with avoidant attachment to do something when like engaging in a vulnerable conversation or moment. So, if you're working on pushing yourself, challenging yourself, increasing that tolerance with a friend, with a partner, whoever, they say to like go for a walk, cook together, do a puzzle, do something where like you have a little bit of a distraction so that it feels a little bit easier to access those emotions. So I thought that that was interesting.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great starting point, just to kind of work through
Yeah.
that initial discomfort. So,
Yeah.
yeah, great
Absolutely.
tips. Great
Yeah.
tips. If you want to submit a question, email us at info@askatherapistpod.com. We also welcome your feedback on today's topic. Let us know, are you anxiously attached, avoidant attachment? Are you not sure? Are you secure? And let us know what resonated with you, what didn't. Let us know what we missed. And if you have advice for our listener, please, please, please do share it. Emails and DMs are always welcome. You may hear your feedback on a future episode. So keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested in connecting with Kenzie or I individually, check the caption for how to reach out to us. And remember, don't wing it, just ask a therapist.
That's it for today's episode. We hope it gave you something to reflect on, or maybe even that aha moment.
If so, you know the drill. Rate, review, subscribe, and don't forget to text it to the group chat. Remember, sharing is caring.
If you have a question you want us to tackle, big or small, we want to hear it.
Email us at info@askatherapistpod.com or slide into our DMs on Instagram at askatherapist_pod.
You bring the questions.
We'll bring the insight and probably a metaphor or two.
This is Ask a Therapist.
See you next time.